Nick, how we doing?
Hey, coach, how are you?
I'm doing all right. You guys got nice polos.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Did you design that, or is that something that just the school puts out?
No, they designed it for us. These are for like the entire athletics department. So basketball, volleyball. This this is Hunter Athletics. But then we have some wrestling stuff too. T-shirts, different like compression shorts, things like that for practice.
Do you guys all have to
Thanks, man.
use Under Armour stuff?
That's actually a good question. We've had a mix of everything. I think it just depends on what's the most affordable that year and where they're getting the deals from that type of thing. But we switch it up. I do like Under Armour though. It
Yeah.
lasts. Nike, I love Nike, but it rips. Nike looks cool, but a lot of the times it you could see it wears down quick, right? How do you
Yeah,
feel about gear?
yeah, I think with Under Armour, I know CCB just switched. That's where I wrestled at college. They went from Adidas to Under Armour, which is cool for wrestling because like Rudis is cool right now. So since Under Armour doesn't have like a wrestling shoe, it's like they've all started using Rudis and have like a shoe deal with Rudis now. So I don't know if you guys do anything like that or
I'm a fan of Rudis, but again, I feel like their shoes sometimes you don't get a lot of mileage out of them. I'm more of an old school guy.
yeah.
I'll go ASIC, if I'm trying to get something that's durable. It depends, right? It's like, do I want to get a cool looking shoe or do I want to get a durable shoe? I always say every wrestler should start with the Matt Classic. Like new wrestlers on your teams, I see you guys are having the tryouts. How did that go? Or not the tryouts, but the meetings, like parent meetings type of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, so we have a parent meeting tonight. Dude, it's weird. It's like every time we go back to school, it's like we have to do all these meetings. We have back to school nights, not just for like the high school, but this year we're actually starting an elementary and a middle school program in our town, which that hasn't like happened before. So we're like going to back to schools for that. So we're gonna go to our elementary school that's down the street and our middle school. But I mean, it's fun. I think it's necessary, and I think especially like with we call it like our tabs group, but it's basically like our booster club for wrestling. Just making sure the parents we all get on the same page, right? And I think just trying to make sure everyone's about the same thing, and I think they are. Is like we're all just trying to make sure the kids have everything they need to be successful. And I think when you approach it like that, um, sometimes there's going to be differences of opinion, especially when there's money involved or, getting new singlets or getting cool warm ups. And, our parents, they like to get different kinds of warm ups every year. And it's like, we just want the same thing. And, but I don't know. I think those conversations are important just because, if you can get overcome those differences, then you get buy-in from your parents.
Yeah, the parents are like the stakeholder in the company. They're your major stakeholders in the company of high school youth wrestling, right? So I think a lot of the time coaches in the past, it's like, no, I don't want to deal with the parents. Parents are a pain. They're going to be involved regardless, so you might as well have a great relationship with them, and being transparent from the jump. Like you guys are doing a good thing with preseason, get making things be transparent from the beginning of the process and making sure they're on the same page because the parents are the ones who are bringing them to the practices who will actually advocate for you like no, coach B, he wants you there, like you should. They're the ones who are going to push the extra incentive if they like you and they realize you guys care and want to build the program and help the community. Like they could either be your best friend or worst enemy type of deal when it comes. That's my opinion with the parent
Yeah,
situation with high school.
I didn't even realize like when I first started coaching high school because I coached club before when I was still in college. But when I started coaching high school, I didn't realize how like important the parents are. And it's like you said, they're the stakeholders. So like if you want to get things done as a coach, you need to get parent buy-in, which is like one of the I think I don't know.
From day one.
It's just challenging. I'll just say that.
It
I think if
is.
you could be doing everything right, but the thing is, the parents aren't in the wrestling room, so they don't really see stuff. So for me, it's just, and that's part of the reason why I'm doing the podcast is just trying to get, I think, ideas out there, just either for me to learn how to interact with people like that, and trying to get them to buy in, but also getting my personal ideas out there too, right? In a way that, is a little more visible.
Yeah, absolutely. I used to coach at the middle school and high school level prior when I was like in grad school, when I was finishing up my degree. So long story short is one of the coaches that I aligned with and worked with, who was a mentor to me, he was big on having these preseason parent meetings from the beginning, from just like you guys are doing. So I picked up a lot of that, and also parent expectations, parent behavior, um, things that we're going to want for your child, i.e., like we do practice every day, 4 to 6 o'clock. I'm just using, but like explaining
Yeah.
like they need to be there every day unless it's like a medical or family emergency. This is just me using basic, but if they don't come from a wrestling family, and I don't really know, I know you're in California, don't really know the area, the community that well, but you're explaining it to somebody that's never been, maybe they didn't have a kid who did it, or maybe they didn't do it. So it's like we have to tell them all this. You're a wrestler, I'm a wrestler. We know this. This is like common knowledge, but a lot of our parents or people invested in our programs don't. Bottom line, even other coaches, even other administrators. Let's even that's a whole nother thing we could talk about, but they have no idea the culture of wrestling and the sacrifice and what it takes, right?
Yeah. What would you say is like the number one thing, like if you were going to explain to a new parent, if you're back coaching club or coaching high school again, we got a brand new kid into wrestling. What do you think is like one of the number one, not mistakes maybe that parents make, but one of the number one challenges that you have with somebody that's new to wrestling?
You're gonna have to explain to the parent, the stakeholder, like we said earlier, like we want what's best for your son or daughter. I want your son to be successful on the mat in life, but as a coach, we're going to have to push them outside of their comfort zone, and we're going to be asking a lot from them that's not normal in today's society
Yeah.
and what's the norm. So at times it might seem like we're being really tough on them, but we're going to have standards and expectations, and it's just explaining to them that like our job as the coach is to not make you feel comfortable all the time. Of course, we're going to do things that, are good for the team outings, social type of culture building activities. But in order for us to get the most out of your child, we're going to be asking for them a lot. So that's really why we're having this meeting, because we want to be on the same page, and we know how important it is for you to see what we're trying to do. And if they listen and do what we ask of them, they're going to be really successful within our program. So that's kind of like the language I would use, but it's really important they know that for the jump, because then they're going to be like, oh, Coach B, he made me do all this stuff after practice, and like I don't know why, or you know what I mean? Like there
Yeah.
can't be anything lost in translation. Mitigating these issues from the front side. You know what I mean? As an educator, and you know how it is with school and everything. Just trying to get ahead of it.
Yeah, I counter that
If you
more
hear
with the
me.
high school, like the high school part. And then I coach. I'm actually in my high school classroom right now, so if a random bell goes off, that's why. But with the high school part, I definitely get that part. Just getting, I think parents to understand that wrestling is supposed to be uncomfortable, right? Like I don't know if synonym's the right word, but if you were to replace wrestling, like to struggle with, to overcome, and I think the flip side of that is what I see more with actually the youth club, where I see
Mm,
parents that, like our town's very rich in wrestling. Like, Jake Varner, Nate Morgan, those guys went to BHS High School, Bakersfield High School, and they're on the other side of town. And then our valley, like our first qualifying tournament in our postseason has like Clovis in it and Buchanan in it.
oh,
And it's all
okay.
kind of in the same area. So it's a wrestling town, so there are parents that may not have wrestled, but they know somebody who wrestled, or they went to school with somebody that wrestled. So that sometimes not isn't like a good thing, because they have this old school mentality of like, all right, we got to make weight. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but when you're 6 or 7 years old and you weigh 40 something pounds, and now you have to lose 2 or 3 pounds for a tournament every week, it's like, it's a hard thing to kind of step in and be like, hey, that's not the way that you should do that, and trying to be a little bit more strategic, I think, with your words on that. But I mean, that's one of the, I think the challenges that I face. But I think it goes back to what we said earlier, right? It's like having those parent meetings and talking about the process. But yeah, just talking about the process beforehand. That way, it's like we can get ahead of it, and then that way, when we have that conversation, it's not like me attacking you and saying you're a bad parent, because I don't want them to feel like that. But it's, again, from my perspective, and I think yours too. It's like we just want to help the wrestlers reach their goals, and I just don't want kids to quit. I want them to wrestle all the way through high school, because it's such a great thing to do.
Absolutely. I talked about this recently on my page, like retention. I was trying to explain to a commenter um, who was combating me off of one of the things I said because it stirred the pot a little bit. But I was talking about specifically retention from eighth to ninth grade. Like here in New York, we do modified. So wrestlers in middle school, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade traditionally do modified unless they're very good. They're brought up to the varsity level in seventh and eighth grade. But why I bring attention to this is because there's a gap between eighth grade and ninth grade, modified to JV. A lot of wrestlers fall off from that eighth to ninth grade. Either they're not adapt to the competitive standpoint, the amount of competitions. It could be a large number of things. The reason I bring this up is there is a like a problem. There is a challenge in wrestling right now from that eighth to ninth grade. We see that's usually where kids start to fall off because maybe they did middle school or modified, depending on the state and area you're in, and then they get into a JV varsity room and they're like. So I think and freshman in high school, like that ninth grade year, and freshman in college specifically, and as a college wrestler, I think we need to, as coaches, set up like some sort of transitionary period or even a mentor with an older student athlete in the program to help that kid because that's going to be their toughest year. Is like that ninth grade in high school and that freshman year in college because that's the
Yeah.
transition time. Same thing with students. You deal with I'm sure. What grades do you primarily teach in high
Uh,
school?
I teach 11th grade, and I've taught
Yeah, so
I've taught
they get
juniors
it.
before. I've taught sophomores, but 11th grade's great. Like they don't burn
They
out yet.
got it.
They're a little bit more mature.
For sure. And just from like the coaching perspective, I noticed that like kids making that jump from eighth to ninth grade or that freshman year in college. There's a lot going on. There's a lot. They're getting used to the schedule. They're getting used to the transitions. They're getting used to the workload. So we have to like put like those accountability things in place to try to, like you said, keep them with the sport, retain them. That's when kids quit a lot, right? The
Yeah.
coach, there's a lot of schoolwork, this, my parents, that. I'm sure you've had it. Um, but what would you say are some of like the biggest challenges within your program or that you see retaining at student athletes?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like what you said, right? And that's something that stick out to me like right away is like how do we get these kids not only to continue their love for the sport, but so I wasn't coaching at Frontier forever. I actually coached at a different high school, and that had different challenges. I'd say generally the kids came from a lower economic status, to say it like that. But the kids would have a lot of, just say, have a lot of free time, maybe where their parents weren't around. So what I noticed is our kids, and this kind of happened actually during COVID, where basically they weren't in school and were going off and doing crazy things, and like not only that, but posting it on social media too. So my thought was like, dude,
My
how do we
worst
get these
nightmare.
kids? Oh, I hate
My
it.
worst nightmare as a coach. Once you see,
um,
yeah, I'm like, oh boy.
well, especially like we're trying to train, and like we're trying to make sure we're doing it. So we're like, obviously to be safe, but also like, I was a teacher at the time. So like possibly my job's on the line. So just
Right.
trying to do it in a way that's safe and like, no one's gonna get sick and no one's gonna get in trouble, anything like that. But we're trying to do that. But then you're posting a video of you at a party on a weekend, and I don't see it, but I have like a former college teammate that sends it like, "What the heck is your wrestler doing?" Um, so it's not just the wrestling part, but like the behavioral part too. Like just making sure they know like the expectations coming in, like this is the path to success, and not doing it where I think you have to hammer guys in, but almost like trying to slick them a little bit, to kind of use J Rob's terminology. But so what kind of looking at this, kind of like what you said, whenever you make those transitions between levels, like whether it's from youth to high school or high school to college, that transition period is so tough. And I think it's kind of what you said. Like in college, you see it, I think, a little bit more because I think coaches are aware of it. like I had an older guy on the team that kind of took me under his wing a little bit, and I think for high school, it's like we could try to do something like that. Just and we kind of try to program our high school guys to do something similar to that. But also too, like I tried to do this to where this is the first year we're doing it, but all those kids I know are going to be coming in together as the same class
Hmm.
is basically trying to have sit downs basically with their parents and have meetings with them and kind of just say like, hey, like this is what our expectations are coming into your freshman year. Like this is the skill you need to work on. This is the mentality that you need to have. Like these are some of the tournaments you are, and then making sure that line of communications there as well. Right. Like if you guys need something, like let's have a conversation about it. And let's try to come up with the best plan possible for this person's success.
These are with their new wrestlers, your freshmen. That's
Yeah. So
really
this
good.
Yeah, this will be like, the kids that we know, like, are pretty serious about it. And we know we're not recruiting them. Like we know, like, okay, they're telling us they're going to come here. It's like, all right, fine. Let's have this transition year before you come in as a freshman.
That's a good idea. What you got? I would recommend, not that you have to do this, but maybe with some of those seniors, you link them with some of the freshmen, um, just to look out for them, like a buddy system almost, or an accountability type of thing. And especially like we've done it in our program, even in the college level, because we're an urban school, we're a commuter school. So we don't have kids on campus. So they live in either dorms throughout the city or in the outer boroughs. Think of like LA type of dynamic. I don't know if you've been out to the city or not, but long story short, I tried to connect kids who are different, who wouldn't normally be socially like friends. So it forces them, again, like we were talking about, the uncomfortable thing. So we would pair kids who would not traditionally be friends,
Yeah.
different interests, different backgrounds, and it actually worked pretty well. And then because usually we don't realize it, but the kids stick to cliques, right? Or people in general, we go with what's comfortable or who is like us, has a similar interest, hobbies, background. So by doing that as a coach, you bring your team together closer, and now they're building a relationship they normally wouldn't build within the program. And it's an accountability thing, and it's a leadership thing. And if you can get the kids to want to do it, that's always half the battle, right? Making them think it's their idea
Yeah.
versus
And
the adults.
it sounds like you're trying to create like a tribe almost, right? And I think that tribalism is so part of just human nature. And I think having that buddy system, I think, is just you're building a close relationship with somebody, and then as long as everybody's kind of going the same way, like in a positive way, like I think that's a really good strategy. I gotta steal that one.
Yeah, I think that would be good. I'm sure you guys have a lot of team leaders. I saw on your Instagram you guys had a state champion last year, right? Miguel Estrada.
Yeah,
That's great. You guys have some success now, things for the younger guys to look towards and build towards. And obviously, I like to go into these types of things and know a little bit about you guys, but um, that's big to have those models of success. Like you could be
yeah,
like Miguel, for example. I don't know him as an athlete, but you need to have those talking points as a coach. If this is what we're trying to accomplish, look at Kid A, for example. He followed X, Y, and Z, and that's why he got. I'm sure you guys have those talking points as coaches, but super important. Is
yeah.
he done or
No, his freshman year was our COVID year, so we didn't have a state tournament. We had an unofficial state tournament, so he won that, and then he won the last two state tournaments. So it would have been cool.
beast?
He could have been a four timer, but yeah. So this is going to be his senior year, and then he's going to wrestle at Iowa the year after. So
It's
he's
awesome.
a good kid, but the thing that I kind of I not necessarily struggle with, but trying to get him to buy into is like he's so stubborn, and a lot of really good kids are right. It's like it takes like you to have a setback before you start to change. And what's made that hard too is he actually had a pretty major surgery. He tore his. It was like a bunch of things happening with his shoulder. Like a piece of bone
Yeah,
came off, tore his I think his partially tore his labrum, and then there was some muscle in the back that he tore as well. So he had this big surgery. So he missed a lot of the preseason last year and didn't wrestle really his first top 10 match really until late December. And at that point, it's hard because you want to make sure he gets the reps that he needs. But in order for him to grow, he needs to encounter those setbacks. But you also don't want to encounter struggle because you don't want him to get hurt because you need him, to make sure that he's healthy by the end and healthy for college for one. But that was kind of the struggle last year. But this year, he's feeling good, so I'm excited to see him go out and just have fun and enjoy it.
Definitely. Yeah, dealing with injuries, dealing with setbacks. This is more of like the mindset perspective, like teaching them that failure is a stepping stone and it's necessary for success, and not wrestling with anything like they're trying to hold back. So, yeah, you need those challenges up front. I think sometimes an injury can be one of the best things to happen to a wrestler because now they have to enforce and like embrace gratitude and not taking it for granted, and like understanding I get to do this, I don't have to do this. And when you're very successful at a young age, it could start to begin to feel like, oh, job and work, the training and the monotony and the routine. That's why we'll get there. But talking about like, obviously consistency is important, but so is variety. We burn kids burning out. We need to maybe we do an outdoor workout, right? You're in beautiful California. Maybe we do an outdoor workout today. Like switch things up. Let's get outside the wrestling room. Maybe we'll do like a circuit running. I don't know. We'll do pummeling on the grass. I'm sure you guys have some beautiful things there. But my point is like, yeah, we want kids to embrace that gratitude mindset. And obviously, it's going to help them in life, and they're going to end up being better wrestlers for it by default if they learn to embrace everything, not just wrestling, but school, their relationships with their parents, friends, family, things like that. So, again, going back, I think that's what we have to do. We have to show how wrestling is not just going to help you in wrestling, but everything, right?
Yeah, how often do you incorporate that kind of stuff, like talking about graciousness, like the mentality element of wrestling? How often do you incorporate that with your team?
When I was growing up, I'm going to be funny because we're older. When I was growing up, not, that stuff didn't matter. Not
Yeah.
never. But now, every day, in some way, shape, or form, either pre-practice talk, which I like to keep at 2 to 5 minutes because us coaches, we love to talk. So I'm training myself to speak less and just in like bullet point fashion. Or at the end when they're like, when the guys are stretching the hamstrings, they're like cooling down. Like, name one thing you're grateful for. Name one thing someone else did good today. Name one thing you learned today. Focusing on positive, simple, boom, boom, boom. Because it goes back to the tribal theory you said earlier. They need to feel they're a part of something. They need to feel that their voice is being heard. It's not just us telling them what to do. It's a little different with the high school, obviously, because they're in high school. It's appropriate for age, but they
Yeah.
still need even if they need to be involved in the process, the voting process, the speaking process, as a teacher, like there's creates the buy-in, right? What have you guys done that have helped buy-in? Things like that, or
Yeah, so I kind of, so I stole something from Phil Jackson where he has like a theme for every single season, and our themes I've used four so far. I used one when I was at my previous high school, and then the last 3 years. But it tries to relate to whatever we're trying to work on that year. This year, it's all in. So basically, it's like we all need to be kind of bought in together. We need to be able to do this together because, I think people think just because, oh, you qualified for the state tournament as a freshman. We had a lot of young guys qualify. And then we had, our a guy won his second state title that's older. So it's like we have this mix of kids that think, oh, this is just going to happen. But it's like, no, like this is the path to success. And for you to reach that point, like we all have to do this together if we're going to accomplish this team goal that we think we're capable of. It's like we talk about being a top 10 team in the state this year, which it's I don't know if you've looked at California. It's one state championship. There's no divisions really.
it's like New
It's one state.
Jersey. It's
Yeah,
awesome. I
yeah. I
love
mean,
it.
it's fun, but it's a beast because like there's so many really good teams. It's like to be even a top 10 team, you need at this point like 5 or 6 state placers, to be like to be able to challenge. Like Buchanan, not this last year, but the year before, they had 4 or 5 state finalists, and I think maybe 10 state placers. And it's like that takes a team effort to win a team title. So it's kind of like everybody needs to do it. And I talked to our guys the other day, like, you know, if you see somebody on the team that maybe like they're kind of alone at lunch or they're kind of doing their own thing, like bring them in. If you guys go to hang out at somebody's house, invite that person that you know lives, that just maybe that um, needs to be included in that because it's like for one, it's like yeah, you're gonna need that person to feel a part of the team in order to have success, but also too like we want to be good people. It's like you have
Right.
to work with this person, get to know them.
Especially of what you're saying with the now new dynamic of California, where you're saying you need like 5 to 6 state placers, like in every program in every state across our nation here. You need to be culture is number one, but even more so if you guys are trying to win at that state level, even the second string, third string guys need to feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves, bigger than themselves. And we can talk a little bit about what's going on culturally, generationally. The bottom line is this: the kids need to feel, these kids, this generation gets behind causes, right? They get behind movements, they get behind ideas. So we need to create our wrestling program as that idea. And we need to show them, like All In, for example, or one of Phil Jackson's themes. We were just talking about gratitude, how that can help them be successful, not just in school, but like in life. So we want to get that buy-in. We need to make them, we need to show them how wrestling could be that vehicle, how that could be that tool. And I know a lot of coaches say this, but I'm bringing it a step further. We were talking about social media earlier. We know what life is like before the phone, before dial-up, the computer room. If you have older siblings, right? I'm being funny. I'm dropping, but we're not that old. But the point is that it's a different time now. So everything in their life is instantly. Everything is superficial. There's not as much profound as there once was. Where I could say personally, as a wrestler, when I was growing up, I didn't need all these things. I just wanted to win. But it's a different time. So as coaches, it's like you can't think of it as what worked for us. We have to think of it what works now. And what works now is the kids want to be part of something bigger than themselves. That is something I wanted to share with you, especially as a high school coach, and what we're
Yeah.
trying to do at a college program right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think with high school it's hard because kids are still like thinking that life, it's just going to happen tomorrow. Like being so like I can't think of the right phrase, but maybe in the moment per se. But with your college team, I feel like maybe with the younger guys it's kind of like that, but the guys that maybe kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel, like knowing like I'm going to graduate college, what am I going to do? Do they maybe is that not necessarily easier, but are they more inclined, do you think, to kind of have that perspective of understanding that, wrestling is giving you these life skills that you can use to apply to your relationships, to your job, to raising kids, like whatever it is.
Definitely, for the most part. We had a wrestler who was a senior this past year, and he recently started a new position like downtown in New York City in Manhattan. So he started, I think, over the course of this past season, seeing these similarities between things that you and I know as professionals for a while now: networking, like LinkedIn, professionalism, work, the carryovers, right? It's like what the great Dan Gable said: once you wrestled, everything else in life is easy. And he started seeing that as he started this transition from the academic to the professional world. So, really proud of him, really excited. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think when they're older, they start to see it more. And I'll tell them straight up, like, this is the hardest thing you'll ever do. There's your career is not going to be anything even remotely close. If you could do this and you can be consistent, anyone can be motivated for a day, a week, a month. That's why I always say consistency over intensity. That's what makes college wrestling so tough, is not showing up for the fight on Saturday, but being able to do it week after week, month after month, year after year. It's the consistency factor. That's what mentally tough people do. They're consistent when things are great, when the sun's shining, and when the rain is pouring. Does not matter. We do not like, that's a mentally tough person, someone who doesn't allow the little things to break them down and does the little things right day after day, week after week. There's a lot of value in consistency, and I think especially with like ninth and 10th graders, getting them to realize like, dude, half the battle is just showing up. You just show up consistently, it'll take care of like 90% of the issues, technically. Yeah,
Yeah.
physically. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think there's not necessarily. I don't think it's a secret anymore. It's like you just have to work hard and be consistent. And like you said, you're going to get most of the way there. I think that's maybe where we go back to like the youth wrestling. It's like you don't necessarily need to grind. I mean, I'm not necessarily 100% down for kids to wrestle 365 days out of the year. I think they need a little bit of a break. But my thing is just like I just want to make sure like you have the best experience possible, both as a parent and as a kid, and you keep coming back and you keep building on these skills over time. So by the time you get into high school, it's like, okay, you know how to wrestle a little bit, you understand what it's like, you understand how to work hard. And then in high school, let's start trying to figure out what's your style a little bit. Let's keep developing your fundamentals. And if you want to wrestle in college, I think that's awesome. But again, it's like we didn't do this because necessarily, we're so about the result. We did this because we're about the process and we're about doing the process together. But yeah, I think like what you said, it's hard for like ninth and 10th graders to kind of buy into that. But again, I think it goes back to trying to slick them, trying to get them to buy in ways where they think it's maybe their idea and not just hammering it into them.
Yeah, less drill sergeant and more like teacher. Give them choices, allow them in the process, but the answers are the ones you want at the end of the day. So
Yeah.
guide them down the rabbit hole, but say, hey, do you guys want to do sprints after practice or pull-ups? Either way, you're going to be satisfied, you and your coaching staff, because it's going to accomplish the goal that you want, either increasing muscular strength on the pull-up or getting better conditioning, but making them feel like they're in control, especially the kids now, making them feel they're a part of the process, because this is the Y generation, right? This is the Y. They can look up everything, Google. When I was growing up, again, and it's not to say we're old, it's just a coach told you to do something, you did it. That's it. But now the coach has to have authority by being able to explain the why. And sometimes I overdo it with my athletes and my students, but they're trying to figure out like, oh, what's like the reasoning. You don't have to go into a full dissertation, but like we're gonna do pull-ups because they increase pull strength, helps you with takedowns. Done. They want to know why.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, or fortunately, it makes us better coaches, but it's something that people need to understand now. They grew up with the Google search engine in the phone. They're going to look it up. Do you understand what they're going to look up is what Mr. B teaching me correct? They're going to go on Google. Am I right or wrong as a teacher?
No, it happens.
Somebody in the game.
Yeah, no, an assignment where we were learning about the Red Scare. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if you know about that, but it's like there was this fear that there are these communist infiltrators like all in our country, and that they were going to bring down like society. So I don't know if you play the game Mafia, but it's like the card game. So I kind of had like something similar set up with the classroom, but like kind of the Red Scare, there wasn't really a lot of communist infiltrators. Like there was almost none. So I told him that there was there's an ace somewhere out there. Like I passed out cards and the ace is the mafia. There's an ace somewhere in the classroom. And I just had it on my desk. So one kid was actually so mad because we told him after, and he's like, he kind of writ me this big long thing like, you're a terrible teacher for doing that. Why would you lie to us? And it's like, you forget the whole point of the lesson. It's like I told you earlier in the week, like this was happening in history, and then we did an activity. It's just, like
That's a
don't
great.
yeah, it goes beyond just the content. It's like don't just assume things are true because I'm telling you it's real, Like it could be
Well,
just
you're
trying
a
to
great teacher. You're teaching them how to think. You're teaching them how to think constructively, like instead of just being listening to what you're told and accepting it for what it is. You have to think outside the box. Well, the ace was right here on my desk. You got to think a little bit outside the paradigm once in a while.
yeah.
No, it's a good lesson. I brought that up earlier because to increase buy-in, you got to sometimes be able to explain the why to these kids instead of like I just told you, just do it. Sometimes they need to hear that, right? It depends on the individual athlete, but a lot of the times by explaining to them like, well, we eat this after weigh-in because of X, Y, and Z. We do this warm up because it helps us get ready for the competition. You don't have to go crazy with it. I don't believe in like giving kids like an exercise physiology lesson, but
Yeah.
just like 1 or 2 cent why we're doing this, just so they know. So then they're like, okay, coach has a reason. Do you
Yeah.
get what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
generational differences and things of that nature, where I'm trying to go with this. It's this stuff took me a long time to realize.
Like in our back to school meetings that like, okay, for our lift, like we're going to work on, building athleticism. We're going to work on explosiveness. We're going to make sure our body's conditioned for the season. And, for some of us to have to manage their weight, on over an extended period of time, making sure our joints are healthy. So like, okay, that's why we're doing it. And then we backtrack. Okay, well, we're going to do a lot of resistance band stuff. We're going to do some joint mobility stuff. We're going to make sure we're stretching. We're going to be making sure, we get good cool downs. But just things like that. And that, like you said, it doesn't need to be this big long course, but I can explain that in like 5 to 10 minutes and then be done. And then if they forget, we remind each other. But yeah, I think it's trying to find that balance, right? Because you don't want to over explain things because that's just too much time, you know.
We don't have
Um,
that time.
what about with like feedback for wrestlers, right? Like, I kind of go back and forth. It's like a kid comes off the mat and whether, they won or lost, like we always give them feedback on their performance. Um, I think it's hard sometimes because it's like I want them to get better now and I want them to figure it out now. So I just give them just straight information. But I think sometimes kids don't respond to that the best. And especially like if you're a parent in the stands and you see that, they think, you're yelling at their kid. That's like wrestling gets emotional. So I guess how do you deal with feedback? Because I actually think you talked about it with was it Evan Gerald? Yeah, so I'm a big fan of those guys, Evan and Steven and Iron Face. Shout out to them. But
They're
uh,
crushing it.
yeah, talk about that a little bit, like giving feedback to your guys.
So yeah, I definitely agree that there needs to be feedback. We were talking about that, and he's in a unique situation because it might be just him with like 30 to 40 wrestlers. So obviously, we were the biggest limiting factor for us coaches, especially educators. You're a teacher too, is time. We can't replicate ourselves. We can't multiply ourselves. We all get the same 24 hours in a day. So one of our most limiting factors as coaches, and I speak to this with one of my mentors, is a time. So and that's why we have to, one, take advantage of the practice time, the 2 hours in the room, because this is the time we have direct control over. Because again, you were talking about, depending on demographic, who your audience is, who you're teaching to, there is so much going on outside in their lives and the external factors. Plus with the phones, right? It's instant gratification all day long. It's easy for them to forget. So one, I think you got to take advantage of the time that we have with them. It's great you're a teacher in the district, you're in the school with them, you get that FaceTime with them more often. That is valuable time. We need to maximize that time. Okay, so going back to dealing with criticism, feedback after the match. Yes, I believe that it needs to be verbal and nonverbal, but there's typically in my mind, and I didn't say this in the last one, there's three types of kids. Three types of kids. They either do well with direct feedback. That was the type of athlete I was. Tell me how it is. That's how I was raised. That's my culture. That's how and all these things come into play, right? How your parents are, backgrounds, direct. Tell me how it is. Don't sugarcoat it. Some kids, they need to be a little more positive, but they're a little more sensitive, which is okay. We need to just know this so we know and this takes time. This is like knowing the individual athlete. And then um, other kids are very sensitive. So I would focus even more on the positive. So every kid is different. I think that maybe doing a simple Google form or some sort of questionnaire with them real quick, like, how would you prefer your feedback? Boom, boom, boom. So you and your staff know, and I know you have a pretty large staff, like what type of kids this is. Because if you're trying to teach a Coach Coco kid and you're straight up with them and they're not that kid, it's just going to go over the head. Or maybe you're the more need a little more positive, but want the constructive feedback, right? And you're doing like too positive. The kid's going to be like, I don't need all this fluff, coach. Just get to the point. So, um, it's just determining what type of kid it is. Do you lay off of them? Do they need there's there's plenty of variations to this, but just knowing, what type is it, a hands-on or a hands-off kid or somewhere in the middle. I didn't
Yeah.
want to be too much with it, but I know that's a great question. But yeah, trying to determine which type of athlete they are, what is their temperament? Are they a hands-off direct feedback person? Are they more indirect? it's the art of coaching now.
Yeah. I think, just trying to think, kind of what you're saying. I think
What type of
for
athlete were you,
yeah.
coach?
Well, I don't, so this is good. I think, I was very self accountable. I think with, especially my wrestling. So I would come off the mat and I would, whether I knew here's my situation. So I moved from Illinois. So I would have gone to Glenmartin
Oh,
High School where like Abe Assad and Tony Ramos, like I grew up in that area. Seventh grade, I moved to Santa Cruz where there's like, there were 6 kids on my high school team for varsity for wrestling. So I go from one extreme to the other. So I knew what good wrestling was. I knew that I wasn't wrestling good. And even though I was beating kids in our area, I knew I was a big fish in a small pond. So I would come off the
mm,
mat and I knew that I just beat the crap out of this kid. But in my head, I'm so upset because I knew I wasn't doing this correctly. I knew I probably should have scored more. I wasn't getting to my offense earlier. So I'd come off to the mat and bless my coaches, like they understood, like I just needed a second. Like I needed to go get a cool down and go in the corner and just like decompress before they came up and gave me feedback. And they didn't necessarily, know the most wrestling in the world, but they were very good about having conversations with me about, okay, what do you think we should do moving forward? Like this is what we think. Like this is how you can make adjustments. And again, these are guys that maybe, I think combined maybe wrestle 5 or 6 years together between the two of them in high school. So, I mean, it was just figuring it out. But I think what we try to do now with our high school group, especially this off season, is we try to make them accountable for their wrestling. And that's a hard thing to do. But we had like a goal sheet where we talked about what is like mentally you need to work on. We had them take like a mental test, talking about like how's your discipline, how's your pre-match routine, like how's your pre-match talk, like things like that. So we know, okay, from spring and summer, you need to work on this for that. Skill wise, like what's your style going to be, right? It's like, okay, you're still developing your fundamentals. We'll keep working on that. But like, how are you going to get to your offense on your feet? What are some main holds you're going to wrestle, from one to the other on top? And that way they know from spring and summer and preseason, this is what we've decided together that we're going to work on. And we try to give them as much free time as we can. But that's I think one of the struggle. I mean, we've never done this before, so we'll see. What's going to happen when the season starts. But ultimately, it's like what you said earlier. It's like this goes beyond wrestling. It's like take accountable for your life too.
absolutely, absolutely. And I would even, do you have like I'm sure you guys do like an award ceremony or an awards dinner at the end of the year, right? So it's like determining what you want the program to be about. You could even do like academic awards. Like in college they do academic all American.
Hmm.
You guys can make something like that for a kid who has like an above 500 record, places, and then does great grades. So then you're reinforcing like that type of modeling. If that's something you guys want as part of your program, like, because it seems like you want to show that it's not just about wrestling. So then maybe you can show them like with work ethic and holding yourself accountable, you can get the grades that you want. And this student athlete so and so did that, and kind of exemplifies that and speaks to that. That might be a good idea, because again, it's getting the kids. Again, it's a time thing. You want to get ROI from your current student athletes to help you. They're your biggest advocates. They're your biggest spokespeople.
Yeah.
Spokespeople. Right? So you get what I'm saying? So you're like, this kid, John Smith, not the goat. Yeah. But he did this, this, and this. So it's this is what we want to exemplify here with, with our program. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. I'm trying to
So
think.
what is like I guess I gotta ask you, what is your program philosophy? What is like it's you and another coach, right?
Yeah, he
Franchati,
was the
I
one that
guess
was
so.
kind of banging on my door. He was just like, "Dude, you need to open up. We need to talk business." We had the same prep period.
We're doing a podcast. We're getting the word
Yeah.
out coast to coast here, coast to
Well,
coast.
it was funny. I posted one yesterday, and the simple it was like during our tabs meeting. So I'm in the back, like just trying to make sure everything's ready, for tomorrow, for this one, and then just making sure everything's posted. And the Simple Man song comes off, and he yells at me, like this is the middle of the meeting, like stop working on your podcast. But yeah, he's
You
he's
know,
uh, He's one of my best friends. He's going to be at my wedding next year. So
That's awesome.
yeah. Yeah, I sometimes I get excited. I go off on a rant. What was your question again? I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. I get it. Yeah, a lot of these relationships we build with coaches and staff are huge, you know?
Yeah.
It's a lot of these people are the closest ones. One of the assistant coaches um at our program, he was on our team in college. So I went to a college in upstate New York. You know, New York is like, I don't know if you have familiar. It's like there's upstate.
I've been to Buffalo and Niagara Falls a few times.
You've been to the what is it, the ninth wonder of the world? One of
Yeah,
the
it's
wonders,
pretty cool.
the
It's
Niagara
pretty
Falls.
cool.
Yeah,
Actually, I went on the Maid of the Mist too. But let
that's
me ask you this
awesome.
though. So are you from that area?
Kinda. Yeah, I mean, I was born in the Bronx, New York. I went to high school in Westchester County. So I've been pretty much all over the tri-state area. I have family in Connecticut, New Jersey, Long Island. So I've always been familiar with the city. You know, everyone you growing up either works in New York or near New York. So we're like I'm gonna try to use an analogy. It's like LA, we're like Ventura County or
Okay.
something. Or
Yeah.
Orange County, excuse me. Orange
It's
County, like if I
you
were
would maybe
using
say
Los.
like a suburb per se.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, our college is located in the middle of Manhattan, essentially, 68th and Lexington. That's called the Upper East Side. So the college itself is right in the middle, like of the city in the epicenter, Manhattan. But most of our wrestlers come from like New Jersey or one of the boroughs, Queens, Brooklyn. So
Yeah.
there are different neighborhoods. It's like I'm trying to use like LA as an example. Like the boroughs are like you know, you have Hollywood and then you have the other like the down, you know what I'm saying?
You got like
It's
Hollywood, Burbank, but you have also like
yeah.
downtown LA, but then you have Ventura. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
I'm trying to use an analogy. I have a cousin who lives actually out in California he loves it. He said one of the best things he ever did was move from the East Coast to West Coast.
So
Change of
here's the thing
pace.
with where Bakersfield is, it's the Central Valley. So it's like you have like all these coastal cities and towns, then there's like a big mountain, and then there's the valley. So like we live in the valley where it's like agriculture and oil, and the coast is very, I'd say, left leaning, while the Central Valley is very right leaning. So it's almost like a whole nother state.
Right.
So it's super like, I love
Same thing
Bakersfield,
in New
but
York too.
it's hazy, it's smoggy. You can't see the ocean. Um, it's dry. Um, so it's a little bit different. But so
Yeah.
for the
We
guys,
got
like,
lost in the sauce here. We got lost in the sauce a little bit there. That's all right. I was
oh, I
just saying
cut
that a
out or
guy
what?
no, I think I was saying, yeah, a lot of the people I coach with currently on the staff are people I've known either used to wrestle with. There's some sort of connection there in New
Yeah,
York wrestling, you know? And again, I think that's like a lot of these wrestlers don't realize the ones they wrestle with in college. I'm sure you have a few guys in your wedding. I know in mine, there's people, teammates, things like that, right? People who
yeah.
those relationships are for life.
Pretty much all of them. And then the one guy is her brother who wrestled for Frontier, actually for my buddy
No
that I was
way.
talking about. And then so how I met her is her little brother wrestles for our club, and I just kept seeing her, and eventually just started talking to her. And that's actually supposed to be a big no-no. Like, you don't do that, because if something doesn't work out, the kid leaves, or it can cause a rift in the program. But I was told, yeah, be careful. But that's why I knew. I was like, all right, I got to marry her now. Like, at this point.
Yeah, traditionally conflict of interest. So yeah, you had to go all in. But no, it worked out. It just goes to show you, I think that, and again, like we're talking about, it's important to explain to them, like, hey guys, some of my best friends are from wrestling. It goes back to what we were saying, like building those relationships, and that's why the bonds are so important. And that's even an activity you can do with them is like ask them what's your favorite part of the team outside
Mhm.
of winning and losing, outside of winning tournaments. I'm sure
Yeah,
it's a competitive. You know, you have a guy who won states, like competitive. It helps to create that culture you want to create. You know, these are just
I,
ideas, things that have come to my mind.
that's a great one. I got to write that. I got Yeah, that's what I'm going to use for sure.
So having them talk about like, what's your favorite part of Frontier? Don't tell me winning. We know that. We're wrestlers. We want to win, of course. That's what like people think you're getting like soft, like we're all being soft. Um, no, it's just we already know how important winning is. Like we're not another sport where we have to teach people to be competitive. Like then the actual nature and the physicality of wrestling is dominance. So I don't really need to reinforce how important winning is. I need them to focus on the process, what it's going to take them to get on the podium in California, to get on the regional podium to qualify for nationals in college. Like, you know what I'm trying to say? The process will lead to the outcome we wanted. And the reason why we have a lot of anxiety in life is because we're test anxiety, just things in general, is we focus too much on the outcome. The result, result, result. I want to get this job. I needed this job. I got to get this job instead of let me craft the best resume. Let me practice some questions with my fiance or my friend. The things that we can actually control, you know what I mean? And we lose ourselves when we're so focused on the end of the tunnel, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Let me ask you this. This is kind of similar, but kind of going down a tangent a little bit. Do you
Of
think
course.
wrestling? Do you think wrestling is a team sport or an individual sport?
It's a team sport. It's a team sport. And that's a good question because you can only get so far with shadow wrestling. And I'm going somewhere with this. I actually was reinforcing at the clinic how important shadow wrestling is. And as a collegiate wrestler, like some of the first thing you do when you walk into a college room for week one is what? Stance in,
Dance in
those
motion.
learning, getting right, a real stance, not a fake stance, a real stance. So I was really reinforcing that because that's something you can do on your own. You don't need a partner for it. Obviously, we're trying to be able to train with limited equipment, limited space. This is New York City. Remembering going back to knowing your audience, go to the turf, go to the field, like set the timer, do your thing. But my point is that you're only as good as your drill partner. And one of the things I told the kids in our program last season is if you just focus on making your drill partner better, and everyone here say there's 10 groups, we have 20 guys. If every one of those 10 groups focuses on just their group, our team is going to 10x our culture. Not saying you got to, because at first when you're trying to change the culture, it's overwhelming for them to worry about everybody. But if you
Yeah.
just build that bond with your practice partner and you actually focus on getting them better, and everyone here starts doing that, the program is going to jump, right? So you asked me, is it an individual or team sport? Yeah, it's an individual sport when you go out there and you wear that Frontier singlet and you're in the States. But even then, you still need your drill partner before you get on to do some hand fighting with you, to do some drilling when you're at the state tournament, right? Or when you're at the national tournament. So again, you're always relying on your drill partner and you're obviously relying on your coaches. So really, it's a team effort. And I think there is this old notion like, oh, you got to be selfish. We got to be selfish to win. Yeah, to a degree. Yeah, you're going to have to make sacrifices. But I really do believe in reinforcing the relationship between drill partners, teammates, working together, because you're only as good as your weakest link. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you have to say to that? What have you had that be a challenge in your program with the individual versus team thing, or you're just more like the narrative of wrestling now? Kind of what is your thoughts on that,
Yeah.
coach?
Well, I guess it kind of goes back to just my high school experience. It's like, well, there was 5 other kids on my team. So it was something to where I was very much like a team guy, and I actually really like team sports. Though our football team was terrible. No offense to if anybody's watching that was on my team, probably
Santa
not.
Cruz.
Yeah, well, it was Harbor High School. We weren't even Santa Cruz High School. We were Harbor High School, and our the football team's actually a lot better now. But I always liked being a part of the team, and it
Hmm.
was just frustrating though when I felt like I was either giving more effort than some of the other guys, or especially when it came to like it just seemed like we weren't preparing the way that we should. And maybe I'm talking more about football than the wrestling part, but it's like we weren't preparing the way that we should. But there was this like this rah rah moment before like we're in the locker room like. oh, we're just gonna go out and get them, and they'll play like the scene in Rocky Four. Where he's like the training montage and he's getting ready to beat the Russian. He yells, "Drive!" Like they play this cheesy stuff and think like, "Oh, well, we're just gonna be motivated to go into the game and excited." And it's like, yeah, maybe, but we're not prepared. So what's going to happen? We're going to have a bunch of flags. We're going to have false starts. Guys are going to forget plays, like just silly things like that. That goes back to preparation. And that was the biggest thing. It's like, and then after, I would be upset. I'm like, dang, we freaking lost again. Like, this sucks. And guys, they'd be upset in the moment. They come to school, come to practice on Monday like it was no big deal, like they forgot about it. And that was my biggest struggle. So that's kind of where I think I kind of like approach wrestling. It's like we are a team sport, but we have to prepare together and be together and train together and hold ourselves accountable, but also hold each other accountable. So when we get to those tough moments, it's not like, oh, I'm going to rise to the occasion. Like I think Navy SEALs, they talk about it. It's like the reason they train so hard, not so that they rise to the occasion, but you always sink to the level of your training, right? We live in a kind of a pretty intense time in America, especially in the education system, with threat of the worst possible thing that can happen on campus, and we have to have these like security talks with our kids and safety talks. And I tell our kids like, hey, when we do our drills, like I know it's always fun in games, but take it serious because you never know what can actually happen. And when you actually get put in a serious situation, a lot of time people either panic or they freeze. And if you don't ever like put yourself in that frame of mind, like this is a possibility, and I need to be ready for it, you're more likely going to fall into that category of freezing or panicking. So just trying to have that preparation again, if you're trying to accomplish a goal, like everybody wants to be a state champ, everybody wants to be a state placer. Okay, you're more likely to do that if you have a bunch of people trying to get that goal with you. But also, it's way more fun to win as a team than it is to win on your own. Like it's way more fulfilling too to see that somebody that you care about and respect have success along with you. That's my thought on that.
Yeah, definitely. I've been in both situations. So it's nice to be in the tournament finals and have a teammate to the left and right of you. Not saying everyone in the finals is going to be your teammate, but having a few other guys there with you on that journey, so to speak, is huge. And I think one of the main things when I ask wrestlers, like what they like about wrestling, it usually comes back to the camaraderie or the bonds.
Yeah.
So as coaches, I think that's one of our selling points. Like we really need to reinforce that and provide examples of that, and also make them focus on don't focus on being the best wrestler in the room, focus on being the best practice partner, best drill partner. Push. And I guess this is kind of a hard concept for high schoolers, but you even see some challenges at colleges. Like that guy's not having a great practice. You need to push him and get him uncomfortable. If we want to talk about being like a family and being a program, a family has to push each other when things are not always comfortable. Goes back to what we talked about earlier in this call. Coach's job, put the athlete in something that's uncomfortable or unchallenging or way too challenging, right? So we're going to put them in that discomfort zone. But my point is that just reinforcing that to the wrestlers, like being the best drill partner you can be, being the best teammate you can be. And if we do that, we're going to have a pretty darn good team because everyone's going to be pushing each other to get to that next level. So it's like high school kids, it's hard to teach them accountability because it might like go into like gray zone bully mode.
Yeah.
So they might need more like concrete examples of like, hey, like help this guy get the next sprint or encourage them to finish. Because you know how when they take it too far because they're kids.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Cool. So you got to have to show them a little bit, but you get what I'm saying. But like also, if you explain to them like and in those stories, like you say when you went to high school, Harbor, explain to them like it was just five guys. This was the football program, and I really like what you said, that Navy SEAL quote, like you fall to your like highest level of training. Like it's so true. When the pressure is on and the fight or flight is going and the adrenaline is pumping, yeah, you're gonna fall. Did you do the running or did you not? Did you do the
Yeah.
live goes or did you not? You can't hype yourself into success. That's what and I have experience with football and I've coached football. Like that's sometimes what's lost in translation with football. Like you can't rocky yourself into the world title, to the WBC championship. You know, the reason why the boxer is in the title fight is because he was up at 5 a.m. doing road work and studying film at 9 o'clock last night. You can't hype yourself into success. Like rah rah. You
Yeah.
know, I think
If it was that easy, everybody would do it.
yeah, I think it's like funny though. It's a part of the football culture that's different than wrestling. And I love football, and I think every football player, especially on the line, should be wrestling. Hands down. Don't get it confused. Don't get it twisted. If you're an offensive lineman or a DN, you should be hand fighting. You should be on a 220 or a 285 pounder in California per se. You should be out there learning how to jam underhooks and snap guys down and be aggressive, because you could do all the speed drills and cone drills and fancy footwork in the world, but if you don't know how to make contact, post, snap, you know what I'm saying? Like you don't, like I see that. That's a big gap, and it's because there's a lot of egos involved. There's a lot of politics involved, you know, especially in football. I know it's like that here in the Northeast, don't know, but they should
Yeah.
be encouraging these kids to do multi sports.
Yeah, I think one of what you said in one of your videos was that wrestling is like the best sport because you literally can wrestle and go into any sport and be competitive. You know, like I could not catch a football. I have like stone hands, right? But I could go into a football game and not be very good, but kind of know the play and like I can block, I can run hard, I can tackle, I can do all those things just because I wrestled. And it's the same thing I think with jujitsu, like or anything like that. But I think that's a really good point.
It builds that athletic base. I know you're dealing with young youth wrestlers, so like this is not something I have every day chance to talk about, but we have to remember for that age group, the number one reason the kids play sports is fun.
Yeah. Oh, I
Statistically,
yeah.
like they're doing it because they want to have fun. Like I think that's something we have to like drill into our brain as coaches. Like they're there because they want to have fun. And then usually it's like get into shape, then it's like learn a skill. There's a statistic out there on this. I wish I was good enough to do a share and do all that, but I'm not. I'm not that technologically inclined. But fun, fun first games. You know, they won't realize they're learning and working hard as long as they're finding fun. Again, it's because like the whole, even with our high school guys though, we don't have to treat them like they're a college guy either. You know, we don't have to. It's like understanding. We want to build intrinsic motivation, internal motivation. That was kind of what we were talking about before, like the rah rah thing. That's more external, and like being disciplined, being consistent. That's internal. So
Yeah.
as coaches, I guess the grand old question is, how do we build internal motivation with our athletes? How do we get them to be like another state champion? Like you said, the one athlete earlier, he was hard headed, but that
Yeah.
sometimes that's a sign of a successful athlete.
Absolutely. I think
Yeah,
we'll part of just we were talking about fun. I feel like I am the game master in a lot of ways, just
that's
because
good.
I think I know there's a science behind it. And actually, since I talked to Lawrence Sanz, he talked about how he worked with his mental coach and trying to build neural pathways to build habits. And I think maybe that's why, like, I think games are so important. Is I want to associate the wrestling room with fun, and the wrestling room with growth, and like something that's positive. So kids like coming to the wrestling room, and when they like going to the wrestling room because they know they're going to have fun, that's where you can kind of have that slick 'em kind of mentality where, all right, we're going to have fun at the beginning or we're have fun at the end, but we're also going to have some hard drilling. We're also maybe going to do a little bit of live where you might get a little bit banged up, but just know that this is fun. We're getting better. We're challenging each other. We're getting fun. We're having fun. So I think one of the big things that we do, and our kids love dodgeball. We play dodgeball all the time, and sometimes, like depending on where we're at, I have to kind of check myself a little bit because I get really competitive. But we're playing dodgeball at the end. We'll do like free for all or partner dodgeball. I almost think I told our kids too, like, hey, if we get good enough at dodgeball, maybe we should go to like an amateur dodgeball tournament and try to like enter a team, But just yeah, I think trying to have them that slick them out philosophy a little bit, where just trying to associate the wrestling room with a good time. Not that they're always going to have a good time, but it's just training them to kind of build that neural pathway to think, yeah, the wrestling room is a fun place to go, and the kids want to be there.
Yeah, that correlation between the wrestling room and fun. If they can identify that, that's a pattern for sure. It's not going to be fun every day, but being able to do those things, I think if say you did like the dodgeball tournament, it doesn't have to be. It could be like you guys could do like a beach thing. You could do like a hike. You could do
Yeah.
those like team building activities. That's kind of what I was saying. Those are huge, I believe, not at the college level too, and it's sometimes put on the back burner, but the high school level, you need these things. You need these activities. You need these bonds. This is where you're going to get that internal motivation. I think is what you're talking about, like building those bonds between the guys and creating that supportive environment, and also getting them to associate the games with fun. And we can learn through games too. Like a lot of the time, we there's a lot of this in phys ed, like talking about play, the importance of play.
Hmm.
Unstructured play. Like these kids now don't have play. They don't have as much play. So like we were growing up, right? Like I can get into a whole thing, but things have states change, demographics change, cities change, right? Everything was unstructured. You go to you go to the park and you play pick up basketball, pick up football, manhunt, tag. You're learning how to do these on the street with friends. This doesn't not to say that this doesn't exist, but I know anecdotally, I see
Hmm.
way less of this, and I don't even know how many thousands of miles away from you, but I'm sure you have a similar
Yeah.
observation. You know what I'm
Kick the
saying?
can, dude. Kick the can was like the best game ever. And
So I know I'm
the
not the
one,
only one,
yeah,
and I'm not just making things up. Anecdotally speaking, and we see it from a phys ed lens, like kids are not playing. We're doing too much structured youth travel this, travel that, softball, baseball, soccer. Everybody's getting looking to get a scholarship. They need to learn
yeah.
how to do unstructured things,
Do you
like
think
have fun.
so? The kind of is
Yeah.
that why you think kids are playing less? Is because they're doing all like travel sports and all this stuff at a younger age?
Yeah, to a degree. I
Yeah,
believe that I'm not I'm not against I'm actually pro club wrestling. Like I actually believe in club wrestling, and I think it's great for coaches to have athletes to have another voice and get a coaching from another person. The problem is when the athlete and the parent starts to club hop and have the athlete go to a new strength and conditioning coach every year, a new club coach every year, a new nutritionist, and where there's too much transition, just like how we know it's important for a kid to be in like a stable home, live in one place, have that consistency. Same thing with an athletic perspective. Only in
yeah,
America do we jump around coach to coach to coach to coach looking for the next big thing. You got to give the kid time to develop with that said coach. That could be Coach B at the high school or Coach Coco at the club, but they
yeah,
need time to build that yin and yang and to develop. But I think also they think that a direct relationship between pouring in money and kids' success. Doesn't work that way. Everyone
yeah,
has genetic and certain limitations and maturation. We didn't like there's so many external like psychological and biological factors that if you're not educated in this, it won't. But they think that they can equate like it's a stock, right? Like I'm going to throw 1,000 into this, the kids automatically. It is not a direct relationship. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
And I think that a lot of people think that's how wrestling works. It does not work that way.
No, I
I
agree. I think
There's a
gymnastics
lot
is
I
a
could
great
say.
example of that. I think so. My fiance did gymnastics, but she got to be I think 14, 15, kind of coming in as a freshman and decided she didn't want to do gymnastics anymore, and she had been doing it her whole life. But that thing is so expensive. I don't know if you know about the costs and stuff like that, but I don't know. I think it's ridiculous, especially expecting 11, 12 year olds like this is your prime peak athleticism. That's crazy for that sport.
Yeah, I see a lot of similarities with gymnastics and wrestling. I know that the girls usually peak like in their teenage years, like mid teens essentially, and that's when they're supposed to be going for like Olympic golds, right?
Yeah,
Like senior level. Um, but yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of burnout in that sport. I think there's a lot. They have their own set of issues for sure than wrestling. I what I do think though is for like a 5 to 6 year old, having them do gymnastics in conjunction with like martial arts and wrestling would be great for like body awareness, kinesthetic awareness, spatial awareness. Because we see that a lot, right? With wrestlers, like they can be really good, but they lack some of those like fundamental movement patterns.
Mhm.
Maybe they're highly specialized. Like the kid's great at tilts and leg riding, but he can barely walk and chew gum.
Yeah. Well, that's why
I'm
you
not,
see
this
like
is a
the Russians
whole
do that
different
with.
thing.
Oh yeah. No.
I'm going into a whole, I'm going into like strength and like, but it is an apparent thing, I'm sure.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
not the only one who sees it.
Big time. Hey, we're starting to run out of time, but dude,
I know I
I
got to
feel like
jump at 5.
yeah.
I got to jump. I have another meeting to jump on here at 12:30, but no, I know there's a lot of overlap. I'm talking about like strength and conditioning and the state of physicality in America with
Yeah.
our athletes. And you see it every day. You're a teacher. You're in with the juniors, right? You told me you did.
Mhm.
So you're like me. I'm working with kids. I see the reality. You know, the kid can be like, he can have an awesome leg ride and throw, but he can't even do a push up. You were bringing
Yeah.
up the Russians. You were going to say something about like the Soviets had this stuff figured out decades ago.
Yeah, and
Let's
it's like
keep it a
the
buck. Let's
first
keep
thing
it
that you
real.
do is gymnastics, right? And so you do that for a few years, and then depending on where we think you're going to be best, we'll put you in there in that sport. I think it's a good base for a lot of kids, just the tumbling and like you said, building that athleticism, that body awareness.
Yeah, we did a lot of that in our warm ups at the club, and we did a lot of that stuff in college. I'm sure you guys did too, in terms of your
Oh
warm ups, right? Cool downs. Again, it's fun. I think one of the last play, never forget fun. Culture is king. And it's really the wrestling will take care of itself. I know, never seen you coach. I'm sure you're awesome. We all have great technique. We've all learned great skills from our coaches, our college wrestling experiences. Not that that's not important, but I feel like that's the easy part, the X's and O's, running plays. I think the harder part is the stuff we were talking about today is how to build the culture, dealing with parents, accountability.
yeah,
And I don't think, and you've been doing this 30 plus episodes, right?
yeah. It's 31 right here.
So I'm sure you have, like, I'll let you say this before you go. Like, do you agree with what I'm saying? Do you feel like that's the most challenging part as a
Absolutely.
coach?
That was one of the things I wanted to talk about this episode, but we're not going to have any time to talk about it. I got to have you on again, man. Hopefully we can come on soon. It was a pleasure having you on, and like I said, dude, anytime you want to come on, I'm probably gonna reach out to you again. But this has been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Thanks, coach. It was really nice to meet you and catch up with you today. You're
All
doing
right,
great work out there, man. Let's do a part two.
all
Let's
right,
do a
sounds
part
good.
two.
Sounds
All
good.
right.
Thanks,
Take
Coach.
care. You're
Later.
welcome. Take care.